drive. It needs duplication as it is, and adding the new development in there I think will be a problem. And there's also this lost opportunity, as you say, CZ1 commercial core, and looks like very little commercial is actually in this development.
So just in terms of the commercial, there's certainly an opportunity for a nice commercial frontage to the car park, but also I guess the developers are very aware of the market for commercial space in Casey at the moment, with owning the shopping centre, and so they're, I guess they're delivering what they think is the appropriate amount now, but then also there's still the car park sites that have the capacity to deliver a lot more commercial space in the future if the demand arises. So I think the loss of the loss of opportunity for multiple levels of commercial space on this site doesn't mean that there's not sufficient space in the town centre for other commercial development in the future. And then from a traffic modelling point of view, the conversation I had with our traffic engineer today, I was specifically asking him about the Kingsland roundabout, Bentley Place, Kingsland. And he sent his traffic report to me today, and I haven't read the whole thing in detail, so I can't answer what it looks like out on Claire Hermes yet off the top of my head. But he's been confident that the traffic works. But obviously, I think that'll be something that will be, the full traffic report will be part of the development application documentation, and that will be up to the community and also TCCS to review, to be satisfied that, because there's a planning control that requires us to demonstrate that the road network can cater for the amount of traffic that's being generated. We keep getting into this kind of, I was thinking about it when Peter opened the meeting, with the car parking problem at the Ruby apartments.
It's not just Ruby, it's all of those apartments have the same problem.
And so the question that was in my mind is there not enough car parks, or are there too many cars? And so we need to, if we can, provide as much opportunity as we can to have people not being wholly dependent on private vehicles. But also, that said, we're aware that the public transport service in Casey is pretty rubbish at the moment. And so, like, I was saying before, you can ride your bike here in 15 minutes. To catch a bus from here to Casey is a half-hour adventure. But if we build this building, it's going to be here 50, 100 years into the future. And so I think that we possibly should be thinking a little bit more about how we use transport into the future, and extrapolating what we've done in the past into the future. I'm not sure if that's the right way to think about the longer term future. So, but yeah.
It's just in hindsight, a lot of the people who are at the Infinity Towers and that entire complex there, in their development application, they used a lot of very close to light rail. Most of the people use light rail.
Yeah.
That was a tactic almost in a lot of ways, but the reality is that that has not occurred.
Yeah.
And now there's a situation where taxpayers probably have to come in and alleviate it because the traffic modelling obviously wasn't adequate. So that's why I'm asking what your traffic modelling might be and who is going to conduct that traffic modelling so that we can have a closer sort of examination.
The traffic modelling is being done by Northrops, who I think they're a reputable firm, and it will all be available for review as part of the TA. Yes.
Any other questions? Kevin's got one. While I'm going to Kevin, can you give an example of another development that been done by, you were saying there are good examples of good track record. Where could we go and have a look at one?
So I worked with these development group on the Kingsborough development in Kingston Foreshore. and that's a development which experimented with selling cold shell apartments because they provided people with an affordable footprint into an otherwise very expensive area. It's in a different zone. It's in a mixed use zone, but it has a very successful sort of ground floor commercial use that spills out into the sort of central courtyard space. There's a little bike shop, a little cafe, a little bakery and stuff. So rather than your traditional apartment building that kind of has a bit of grass and a barbecue that nobody really uses, it's actually got some commercial activity happening at the ground floor. And so there's a bit of an opportunity for that to happen on the ground floor in the middle of this space as well, with the commercial that's there and the sort of adaptive ones on the pond side as well. So so there's some good examples, some good things to see at that site. Yeah.
Are you having gas there or not?
We're actually still having a little bit of a debate about that, and the problem that we've got is that some of the potential retail.
Sorry, I don't think you should have gas.
Yeah, I'm assuming that everyone in the room is thinking we shouldn't have gas.
Yes.
And that's the general kind of consensus, except that when you're providing retail spaces in a centre like this, if you're talking to sort of national franchise businesses who you are thinking about trying to attract, a lot of them they won't come if there's no gas, sort of because they have an outdated sort of standard overlay, and so we might have to have a gas connection if we're going to talk about having those.
I can assure you that there will be protests if you do have gas,
Yeah.
right? That just won't happen, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have to think of some other ways of doing it. Maybe gas bottles for those people.
Yeah.
The other thing is, are you putting in EV stuff for electric vehicles?
Yeah, so actually the building codes are changing, and so any building that's sort of coming online over the next couple of years will get captured by building codes that require us to, at a minimum, provide the sort of conduits and connectivity and space in all the electrical distribution boards for EV charging and monitoring and all that sort of stuff. So that's the minimum standard, and the track record of these developers working on a project in Fyshwick, and like half of the first level of basement is being put aside for dedicated EV charging spaces. The pool cars that they bought at the place I was talking about before were Tesla Model 3s. So yes, they're very switched on to the reason that they've got they're very, very switched on to the whole EV.
So we know, another one, we know that the ACT government's spending a lot of money on planning, this meso planning of traffic and so forth.
Yep.
Are you guys plugging into their system so that you can use their systems to figure out what the traffic is going to be like?
That's a level of technical question that I'm not sure about, having not read the traffic report yet and only spoken to the traffic engineer. I'm not sure if he's just doing the SIDRA. So there's SIDRA analysis, which is like an intersection by intersection analysis, versus the mesoscopic analysis, which is a whole of network thing.
So can we ask you to contact them?
Sure.
And see if you can become part of their project?
Yeah, and Marielle is taking notes, and so what we might do is, what we can commit to do is put a little update on the website that's answering a couple of these traffic-related issues.
And finally, you mentioned that the thing might be there for 50 to 100 years. Mm-hmm. Are you going to build a thing so that people will be able to actually modify it in the future and change the internal configuration?
I think that sort of, I'm not 100% sure about that, but certainly the apartments you can be able to rearrange the internal of the apartment, but I'm not sure about the decision if you wanted to amalgamate multiple apartments.
Well, just to give you an example,
Yeah.
we know that a lot of the really high cost places, if you like, in cities are old factories and old office buildings. They were built so that they could be modified inside.
Yeah.
A lot of the apartments, I don't think, are being built so that they can be modified in the future.
Yeah, I know a lot of apartment buildings, the walls between the apartments are structural walls, and so that would make it harder to like rearrange the floor plates in the future. Is that? Is it a yes or a no, Jay? Are they structural walls between the apartments?
Yes, I mean we have structural wall in between. Sorry, we have structural wall in between the unit, and then actually the issue is actually the height, because the residential building is pretty low ceiling, which is 3 meters, but office space minimum, government building minimum 3.7 is very hard to achieve, which means, it's very hard to transfer office building to resi, but resi to office is very hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but that's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Just
sorry,
what?
one more question about I mean, we have a sort of good example because we've completed sort of transforming the building type from office government office building to resi in Warden. If you look at the ANA building, which is a very successful sort of project, we turn it to office building to resi. I think there might be a good example, but this case, so I think.
Yep.
Hey Kip, thank you for engaging the community with this and the way you've been doing things. Seems all very self-explanatory. During the construction phase, will the pond still be open, or will that be something to explain to the grandkids when the time comes?
So I don't know the answer to that. Just in terms of logistics, there's not a lot of space between the pond and the boundary of this block. But I think it might be something we have to take on notice. But it's not that easy to get permission to use the unleased turkey land outside your block boundary. But yeah, so.
But yeah, keep engaging, and a lot of my questions have been answered, but yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yep. Just a question over here.
One question I would like to open up with is any of the residents government housing or only private sale?
So no, there's no for this development. There's no obligation to hand any of the dwellings back to the government as government housing. There is an underlying obligation for the developers to deliver affordable housing as part of their original purchase of the whole group centre area. They had to deliver, I think, 10% of the houses affordable, and so some of these will have to be delivered as affordable housing.
Sure,
Yeah.
understand. My second concern was in the about section, second paragraph, you mentioned that this development was a medium density development. It's obviously not.
Depends where you draw the line, I think.
Medium density is 2 to 3 story, and this is a 9.
Well, that's right.
So
you can.
are we being lied to in the about section for the purpose to persuade us that this is a medium density development and not really a 9 story?
I think that we're being fairly clear that it's not a 2 to 3 story building, and so it's not the high density sort of stuff that's down in the town centre, and I think I'm not sure that there's a strict definition of what's low, medium, and high density. So I'm not going to.
This is not 26 story.
No. Yeah.
Have we taken into account the, I guess, 10,000 residents who live on the hill of Gungahlin who will be then looked upon by the persons living, I guess, 6, 7 and 8 and 9. Does the privacy of those people come into effect when you structure a building that overlooks a lot of homes?
So privacy is a consideration in the planning controls, but the kind of distances associated with privacy and overlooking, this development is well outside the sorts of distances that the planning controls consider that to be a concern for. So,
But
like,
you're going to have a car park in front of it. Isn't that just the same as someone watching me every day? I go to shops every time I leave my home. That's visual.
yeah. So there's actually it's an interesting spin on that, because I would have a completely reverse view, in that when we deliver buildings which front onto public space and car parks and things like that, we're actually encouraged to provide living spaces and balconies that overlook the public domain, because it's actually a really good way of providing passive surveillance and increasing the security and decreasing the incidence of antisocial behaviour. So there's a planning control that says if we're facing public land, you have to have a habitable space that overlooks the public land to provide that surveillance. So,
well, I'll speak for the 10,000 people. The concerns that I'm feeling in the community, and I am on the hill,
Yep.
is the fact that it is such a high-rise building
Yep.
overlooking private residences
yeah,
in that area.
I was more expecting people to say I live on the hill and I currently don't see a building, and I will now see a building in my field of view, and I was expecting people to say that that's a significant change, and some people will or won't care about it or not, but this is a building that you will be able to see from the sort of surrounding environment because of the height, and so
Yeah.
we're not pretending that's not going to happen. But what we're thinking is that there's a balanced view that you can take, in that if Canberra's population is going to continue to grow, we need to find somewhere for people to live, and providing high quality, affordable housing that's close as possible to the amenity that's available is the more efficient way to deliver that additional housing. So there's sort of pros and cons to be considered.
The TTS you were talking about earlier, about the traffic management,
Yep.
I would make a suggestion similar to the gentleman down the end, was maybe that person should come out at 8 a.m. and try and drive on to Clary Hermes instead of possibly do it from his desk.
Yep.
And not to worry about the other end of Kingsley entrance, because everyone comes from Casey and goes to
It's
Clary Hermes, not
Yeah.
Casey. I go in Horse Park at 6 a.m. and there's no problem.
Yeah.
But at 8 a.m, 8:30, it is really hard to get onto Clary Hermes and up over the hill.
Yeah.
But I'd suggest that they actually came out and
Watched it.
did that in person.
Yeah. We're actually, the other thing that people have been emailing about is just the availability of car parking, and so I think that we've got a little bit of extra homework to do about doing some car park counting, just so that we can sort of say, we've been there at peak time on Saturday morning, and Tuesday peak shopping times, and those sorts of things, and we've counted how full the car park is, and we know how many sort of vacant car spaces there are on a typical times of the week. So yeah, we don't have all the answers yet.
Sure. So I'll just finish off with, I'm not allowed to fly a drone around my neighbours' homes or spy in their backyards, but this building is making me feel uncomfortable that I'll be viewed upon by over 250 people based on the layout of that building. Thank you very much.
Okay.
What's any more here? One over there.
I think there's one question on Facebook, which I will read. For some reason, it's not coming up. While it's loading up, Peter, you might want to look into the Facebook question while I'm talking. Okay, while I'm raising this question. So with it's a couple of things, the things that you said regarding, it's going to stand tall for 100 years, and that's all very interesting, to think about. But at the moment, the car parking is a nightmare for sure, because in the traffic in the morning, the cars, that's a chaos. And especially now we have a big chunk of apartments that came recently established near the KC market. It even made it really hard. I know you've been driving on the bikes and stuff. I suggest you to drive the car during the peak hours and then go around and see yourself how mess it is, because your plan would be fantastic prior to the current, the new apartment that came next to the KC, but now it's different story. And then, the suggestions that you said about, people shouldn't be taking they should take bus and stuff. I think, I'm not sure that you should be able to say that. Okay, you should be more concerned about what's going to happen around and things, because those things you cannot control in terms of, people can, because I'm not sure, in Canberra, you got to drop kids, you got to do all kind of things. So if you deny that, you're probably living in a different world. But that's Canberra, that's how it is. It operates on the car. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any public transport. So I just want to highlight those points. And I think the 9-story, I'm not sure where did you drop that number with the 9-story, because in terms of that location and stuff, I think it won't be 9-story. But yeah, I just want to emphasize on a few points, especially on the traffic modelling. The earlier you do it, and I know you don't have all the answers, but I think that's where you've got to start. And then with the number of buildings, because it's going to be, you're talking about 500 residents. So let's assume, as per your logic, maybe half of them don't have car, but still we got to have 250 cars that's going to go out and in. So that's a lot of traffic anyway. So I think these are the things, main concerns. If you can take those points and make sure that those things been addressed, probably we can, there could be a good start to.
And just on the encouraging people to use public transport, etc. We shouldn't be forcing people to do stuff which is completely impractical. What we should be doing is providing the opportunity to make those things as attractive as possible. So, I'm sort of for the carrot side of mode shift rather than the stick of just not providing the alternative.
Look, I think one of the issues with the 9 stories is everyone's comfortable with the idea of a 9-story building along Northbourne Avenue, but when you buy into the outer suburbs, you kind of assume you're buying into a certain lifestyle and building shape, and that's I think what people are banging up against. You did mention there was a theory behind how you came to 9 stories. If that's something you can share to give us some insight, but if there's any context at all, Casey is an area that the ACT government identified in 2018 as a densification area. And unfortunately, that translates into this sort of opportunity for people who have land here. But I bet you no real estate agent sold anyone a block of land saying, oh, by the way, there might be a 9-story building here.
No. I guess the opportunity is there for us to try and deliver this project on the site, and so I guess that what we're doing is we're trying to balance the delivery of the maximum number of dwellings to cater for the apparent demand. There just seems to be unending demand for dwellings in Canberra at the moment, and we think this is a good location for it. And so I guess we could have put forward a building that's even taller. There's not a strict limit on how high a building can be approved at a group centre. What there is there's some criteria that will be measured against, and those criteria relate to the surrounding area, get the right words, the scale, and also things like overshadowing and amenity, etc. So, yeah, this is what we've put forward.
Okay. Any other one? Any more time? More questions? Or?
Facebook question.
Yep. Sorry. I thought the Facebook question was the 9 stories along North Point. Can you read it? Yeah, please.
So